Here we are, live on the internet. I should have been counting the days. I wonder how many days we've done this. All right. It looks like Facebook. I should probably pull it up here because good morning, Amanda. Good morning, Aunt Martha. Pulling it up. Good morning, John. Good morning, Kathy. Good morning, Leanne. Good morning, Mella. Everybody's coming on one at a time here. That's crazy. Usually it doesn't do that for me. All right. Good to have you guys on this morning. Tuesday morning. Getting going. Oh, we lost one. We had 6. Now we're at 5. Now we're at 6. Good morning, Sandy and Nancy and Anthony. All right. Waiting it out here. Just seeing who's coming on. Light group so far. Good morning, Pat, holding it down all by himself over there. Good morning, Kim. Oh, we got 2 on YouTube. That's cool. YouTube's been light the last couple of days. A lot less people. Back to 1 on YouTube. So that was just, now Pat's back all by himself. It's always fun to see this thing and how it goes, you know. It's funny. Some days there's quite a few. Really, we pick up at like 6:15. I think people start getting on. Thank you guys who make this just a regular part of your morning. That's pretty cool. Today I will be putting up a podcast. As soon as we're done here, I'll be the way that I do it is I listen through the podcast, and then as soon as I've listened through it, and I don't really edit much on the podcast, kind of like this, but I just put, like, I listen through it and just make sure that there's nothing overly embarrassing on there, and or killing too much time, and then I upload it. So I should get at that at like a little after 6:30. It'll probably be up by, I don't know, it'll probably be up by 7:30 or 8 o'clock this morning. So if you are following along with the podcast and you want that today, that will be up. Good morning, Mike and Matt. Good to see you guys on here. Facebook is in the double digits. That's good. There's a group of us. I used to do living room Bible studies for years and years and years and years. I'd love to do it again. Sometimes they've been very fruitful. Sometimes they have felt very difficult to do, just plowing through. But what's wild is just like the numbers, the people that would commit to them was very similar to what we have here. You know, sometimes there would be 20, 25, even 30 people, and then other times there would be like, 8 or less sometimes even. So this is very familiar in that sense. Good morning, Drew. Good morning, Mom. Good morning, Claire. Good to see you guys. All right, so here we are. We've got a few of us up at 6 a.m. I know some of you it's not 6 a.m. For some of you it is 2 in the afternoon. Others, I think, for Martha, what do you got? It's 9 a.m. For those East Coasters. Anybody else representing a different time zone other than 6 a.m. and 2 p.m. and 9 a.m.? Any 8s or 7s? 4 p.m. Wow. Where are you at, Anthony? 4 p.m. That's crazy. All right. 9. Yeah, Martha's got 9. East Coast 9. So next week, here's the deal. I'm still not sure how this is all going to work, so it might be a little bit of a gamble for you guys if you're setting an alarm and expecting this to be here. 7 a.m. for Mella. Cool. But next week I'm going to be in Chicago. So my goal in Chicago, my goal would be that I would go live at the same exact time. But I don't know that I'm going to be able to go on YouTube. I may only be on Facebook next week, at least Monday through Thursday. time zone. It'll be Chicago. Man, I'm not sure if Chicago is 3 or 2 hours different. I haven't paid much attention. It's been a while since I've gone that way. So my goal though is that I could do it on Facebook because obviously I'll have my phone with me, but I'm not sure how early we're going to get started with because I'm going to a conference with a couple of guys, and I'm not sure how early we're going to be able to get started. So really, we're going to have to figure it out as we go. So I'm just hoping I can kind of break away and find a place where I can just sit down and do this. That'd be super cool to be able to not stop, because I actually like the idea of doing this in a different place than my prison cell here. Uh, just, but setting up two devices might be too much. So anyway, hey guys, let's look at Matthew. We're in Matthew chapter 24. We're going to finish out the chapter today. There are currently 22 people here, and that's awesome. Between the two, so 23. There we go. Let's pray, get rolling, look at Matthew chapter 24 and finish it out. Lord, we are again grateful that you have given us your word. We don't want to take that lightly. We know that many people have desired to have it throughout history and have not had access to it, and yet we have the scriptures in front of us. And so we just pray that you would speak to us this morning through these things and teach us some things, and again, encourage, challenge, convict. Lord, whatever we need, we ask that you would do. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, guys. Here we go. So, Jesus, again, I know I repeat this often, but it's always good to know the context of where we're at. Jesus is at the end of his earthly ministry. He is on his way to the cross. He is in Jerusalem. He is going to, he will be crucified in only a matter of days. This is the end. Really, the last teaching that he gives is what we're looking at now. It will continue through chapter 25. So chapter 24 and 25. Chapter 23, he gave his last public sermon. When he gets into chapter 24 and 25, now he's speaking to his disciples. They have asked him about the last days. When does it all wrap up? What's going to happen in the end? When is all of this going to happen? And he tells them about the signs of the times. He tells them what you can expect to see at the end of time in chapter 24 in the beginning. And he tells them there's going to be wars. You're going to hear about wars. You're going to hear about earthquakes and famines and things all over the world. And he says, but still, that's not the end. That's just where life is going to go. That's where the world is going to go. And it's going to continue until the gospel has reached out to the entire world. And then he referred to this time that we looked at yesterday, really speaking of the time of the tribulation, that there will come this time of tribulation on the earth where God will finish the work that he has begun with the nation Israel. Okay, and then so all of that is yesterday. Even if it's hard to follow, just the way that I communicated it yesterday, I felt like it was kind of hard to follow in the beginning. I felt like it started making sense it's halfway through. So hopefully, if you're interested, go back and watch that one, and just endure it for the first half and cruise through to the second half, and maybe some things will become understandable. So anyway, here we go. Verse 36. Verse 36, but concerning the day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only. So this is a very popular, famous verse. When is Jesus coming back? When is the tribulation? When are all of these things going to happen? When are we going to see him? And Jesus says, listen, it's not on the calendar. You're not going to know when it's coming, and it's intentional that you're not going to know when it's coming. So your goal is not that you would know that it's coming, or that when it's coming. It's your goal when you're studying and you're watching the news and you're paying attention to famines and earthquakes and you're paying attention to all the crazy in the world. The goal of that is not that you would see it all and try to start a countdown of when Jesus is going to return, when the tribulation is going to happen, when the Antichrist is going to be on the scene. Our goal is not to know the answer to the when, because nobody knows when. The goal is just simply to be ready, that we stand constantly prepared for God to do what he's going to do, for the world and the end time events to unfold as they're going to unfold. There are so many people that get so caught up, truly caught up. Never mind. There are so many people who get so wrapped up in this study of eschatology and like what's going on with, it was Bill Clinton for a while, and then it was Bush for, actually it all kind of calmed down with Bush for some reason. The Christian people that I knew that were just like, the end is now, and then it went, Obama, it was crazy, and now it's Trump, and it's just like, hey, the end of the world, and we love to get consumed by all this stuff. But here's something that I've seen often, okay? The overemphasis on Jesus is coming back tomorrow, or hey, the end of the world is like, we're living in the last days. The overemphasis on just like we're looking at the Bible and we're looking at what's going on in the news and we're trying to make sense of it all. And in that time, there are people who are desperately in need and they're being ignored. There are people around the world who are hungry. There are orphans and widows who do not have access to simple things like clean water and food, and we don't do anything about it. We just sit there and just kind of study eschatology, which is a big word for end times events. And I've even seen it within the churches. I've seen it in churches where you get this real sense of this passion for last days things, but you don't see a passion for people. You don't see love. And Jesus even said, man, if you have all of the other stuff, if you have this knowledge, even of these types of things, if you have this expanded knowledge of Scripture, but you have not love, you're just irritating and noisy. Actually, Paul said that in Corinthians. So this is the thing, is we get so kind of caught up in this study of eschatology, and yes, it's interesting, and it's not something to be avoided, but yet at the same time, it's also not the main thing, okay? So as Jesus is going, he's like, listen, the day, the hour, nobody knows it. The angels don't know it. Now, some manuscripts, the original language, some say nor the Son. The ESV has that. Nor when he says nor the Son, he says even himself, Jesus, did not know the day or the hour. Some manuscripts don't have that. I'm okay whether he knows it or doesn't know it. But the whole idea is you're not going to know it. The angels don't know it. So, slow down a little bit and just be constantly ready, knowing that it could happen at any time. So the point of not knowing the day or the hour is so that you're always ready. And he'll explain that as we go. So let's carry on. Verse 37. For as were the days of Noah, so will the coming of the Son of Man, so will be the coming of the Son of Man when Jesus returns. Verse 38. For in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day when Noah entered the ark. So if you know the time of Noah, in the book of Genesis, and Noah, God looked down and he just saw so much evil on the earth, and he said, you know what, I'm starting over, and I choose Noah to start over with. And so he told Noah to build an ark. It took him 120 years to build the ark. While he's building the ark, everybody else is just going on with life. They're eating, drinking, marrying, partying, setting goals, 5-year goals, 10-year goals. They're looking to the future that they do not have. And they just continue on as if nothing is going to change ever, as if there is going to be no judgment. And so, everything changes when you know that your time is short. Ask those who have been diagnosed with an illness that the doctor says you only have this amount of time to live. Everything changes when you understand that. When you live with just this readiness that, hey, life is short. And so here Jesus is saying, just like in those days, that's the days we're living in. Okay, and in a sense, there is an ark being built right now. And most of us don't know about the ark. Most of us are just going on with life, not even paying attention to the fact that it all ends at some point, that this version of life comes to an end, and there is an ark that is saving us. And and truly, I mean, even Jesus will say when he's after he ascends to be with the Father, he says he's going to build a place. He's going to build a house for us, and he's preparing a place for his people. Um, and so there is this ark being built. There is this place of safety, of refuge being built, and judgment is coming on the earth. When? We don't know. But he says, just like in the days of Noah, you're just kind of, most people are just going on with life, marrying, giving in marriage. We could talk a lot if we wanted to, but I don't, about what was going on in the days of Noah. And there was a lot of just rampant sin going on in the days of Noah. God looked down at the people and he was grieved as a result. So, verse 39, and they were unaware until the flood came and swept them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. So they got, here they were unaware. The flood came in, and if you know the story, if you read it in Genesis, you understand the flood came and everybody drowned in the flood except for Noah and his family, and all the animals that were in the boat, in the ark with them. Verse 40. Now here we go. Some of you, this is an interesting one. I had to spend some time kind of getting a feel for where these verses were going. Verse 40. Then 2 men will be in the field. One will be taken and one left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill. One will be taken and one left. Therefore stay awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But know this, that if the okay, we'll save verse 43 for a moment later. So there's 2 men in a field, one's taken, one's left. 2 women doing work, grinding. What did it say? 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and the other left. So what is this speaking of? There are many people, there are different views on it. There are some who would say this is speaking of the rapture of the church. The rapture of the church is, when Jesus just kind of snatches people off the planet, and before the judgment, and we'll get into that in the future. But I personally don't think that that's what this is talking about necessarily. Perhaps it is, but that God, before he judges the world, he basically takes those out that are living in faith. That's a divisive doctrine, like not in a bad way. I mean, I just there's a lot of people who are divided on different views of how that's going to take place. But I don't even think that this is what this is talking about, because if you look at verse 39, you see that being taken away is a bad thing. They will be unaware until the flood came and swept them all away. It took them all away. The flood is what took them away. And then we get into the next verse, and it says 2 men will be in the field, and one will be taken and the other left. So it seems that this taken idea is to judgment. And so here's how it is. Man, think of a heart attack, or think of just getting hit by a bus. Things like that. Basically, you don't know when your time is. Now, what is this speaking of? There will be this time of judgment. There will be this time where God takes people to judgment at the return of Jesus, that some will be protected, some will be taken away. Now, again, we'll get into rapture stuff in the future, but Jesus, I don't know that he's really unpacking the rapture here. As a matter of fact, even the guys that I listen to that are very strong rapture guys, like, hey, before all the judgment takes place, there's going to be this rapture. Most of them don't even use these verses to talk about the rapture. They themselves have trouble with these verses speaking about the rapture. So, but here's the whole idea. Be ready, because you don't know when your time is. Like, your time may be before the person next to you's time. It may not be the end of the world that snatches you up. It may just be something happens in the moment and you hit the electrical wire and boom, you're done. That just can happen. So just the whole idea is be ready now. Sometimes I feel like, and this, I haven't talked about it too much, but sometimes I feel like I talk about this too much. When my dad died when I was 14, he died at 36, 37 years old. So as a result of that, I feel like my whole life, I've just had this view of like a full life is maybe 30, 36, 37 years old. And Because of that, I've lived in a way that I had a real hard time looking, like, oh, I'm going to retire at 65, because in my mind I just always thought, well, a full life, you're done at 30 and or 40, and so you got to just keep you got to be ready that your life may end short. As a matter of fact, I knew my best friend's brother was killed in a car accident at 14 years old. I spoke at a funeral when I was in high school of a kid who died. He was struck by lightning at 14 years old. So I had these just kind of seared into my mind that life was short, and you never know when it's your time. You don't know. God has not given you that day or that hour, even for you, not much less when he returns and it's over for everybody. But what about your time? When is your time done? If you knew it was tomorrow, if you knew it was today, how would you live your life? And so the idea is that day could be at any day, that the Lord could call your number and you're done any day. And so we are to live with this expectancy that at any moment we could stand before God. Now, for all people, that day is coming. For every single person, even if the Lord doesn't return, if Jesus doesn't return for another 100 years, still every single one of us will one day stand before Jesus. And it will, for every single one of us, be a day that we are not expecting it. And so we need to live in readiness. We need to live prepared. We need to live knowing that we don't want to live in a day where we stand before the Lord and just like, man, I wish I had known, but that we live with expectancy that we're going to stand before God. So here we go. Verse 43, but know this, that if the master of the house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake, and he would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore, you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. Man, if somebody was going to rob your house and they called ahead, right? That would be ideal. Man, I wish before, I've had my house broken into twice, 2 different houses, 2 different times. Very, very violating thought. The first one, we were moving into the house and we had moved some of our stuff, but we were still sleeping somewhere else. And then the next day we go and we move some more stuff in, and we realize somebody's been in our house and somebody took some of our stuff. And, man, it was just this violating feeling of, man, I wish I had known at what time that they were coming, because I would have been there waiting for them and I would have hurt them. And so the second time was even worse. It was between this tiny little window that we were out of the house. So we knew somebody was not only in our house, but somebody had been watching our house, because it was during a Thursday night church service between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. Somebody came into our house and stole some stuff out of our house. And again, I felt so violated, and I wished that I had known that they would have called ahead and said, hey, Thursday night when you guys are at church, we'll be robbing your house, because then I could have been there and I could have hurt them. That was my sense. I'm not a violent person, but man, when you feel that kind of violation, you feel like, man, I wish I could have been there. I wish I could have put the hurt on these people. And so somebody breaking into your house, when the thief comes, man, their whole goal is to make sure you don't know. And here he's using that as an example of God doesn't want you to know. He wants it truly to be that you're living ready. And here's the thing: if the thieves, if there was just this rule among thieves, if they were just unintelligent in their process of stealing, and they're just like, you know what, I'm gonna go steal some stuff on Friday night. I'm gonna call around and see who's not home, and then I'm gonna let them know that I'm gonna come steal their stuff. If that was the process, here's the thing: home security would be really, really easy, because then you wouldn't need to have a security setup or locked doors or any of that goes 24/7. You would just need it to be on a certain day, right? I mean, you're just like, oh man, I gotta have a security guard outside my house between 7 and 9 on Thursday night, and then the thieves will stop them. It's simple, right? But here's what it would do: it would mean I wouldn't have to have my doors locked or any kind of security any other time, because I only need it at that specific time when I know that the thief is coming. That would make no sense, right? I mean, that just seems like I'm just speaking the obvious. But here's the thing: the same is true for us walking after the things of God. If we know that Jesus, if he gives us, hey, mark your calendars, guys, I will be coming, I will be returning for you on October 3rd, 2019. Well, then what? Then we know God is merciful. We know God forgives. We know God is gracious. And so what will we do? We will just live however we want to live over the next year and do nothing. We'll just live for our own pleasures, our own, hey, I only have so much time on the earth. And then what will we do? As soon as October starts, we'll start getting into church, getting serious about the Lord, start, trying to build up as many rewards in heaven as we could get all in October. But man, we don't need to get serious until then, because that's when he said he's coming. But he says, listen, I'm not coming that way. I'm coming like a thief. You need to always be ready. You need to always be living as if I'm coming, because I'm coming at a time that you don't know. Verse 45. Who then is the faithful and wise servant whom his master has set over his household to give them their food at the proper time? Blessed is that servant whom his master will find so doing when he comes. Truly I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions. But if that wicked servant says to himself, my master is delayed, and begins to beat his fellow servants, and eats and drinks with drunkards, the master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour he does not know, and will cut him to pieces and put him with the hypocrites. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, right? So this is one of the things that I have seen. There are many people who follow God, especially in their young years. They follow God, they turn to the Lord, they desire to do ministry in his name. And what do they find? They find that the road is long. They find that, man, in the beginning, they're zealous, they're moving forward. Good morning, Chris. They're moving forward, they're moving after the things of God, they're passionate for him. And then the years go on, and that begins to fade, and they no longer live with the same level of faith. They no longer live with the same level of passion. They no longer continue. And some of them, many of them, even fall away. Of the guys that I went to Bible college with, I had this group of guys in a room. I think there were 6 of us in the room, and I've lost touch with several of them. But man, some of these guys that I roomed with when I was in Bible college, man, some of them, they spent years doing ministry. They were very effective at ministry. They felt there was a calling on their life. And several of them are no longer even walking with the Lord. And as a matter of fact, some of them are very antagonistic to the things of God, because they were given, they were given this time, and it was just this length of perseverance that is needed to follow after God, because there's this falling away that can happen. There's a guy that I interact with sometimes on Facebook who is a youth leader. When I was in high school, he was in my youth group. He was in his 20s. I was in my teens. Everybody looked up to the guy. We were so encouraged by him. He's so gifted, and he was pretty much the cool guy in the youth group. That dude is now incredibly antagonistic to the things of the gospel. Listen, the road is long. We don't know when he's coming back. And so we've got to look at, like, man, if God gives me 120 years on this earth, I know that's ridiculous, but if God gives me 120 years on this earth, I'm going to live for him for 120 years. I'm going to grow for 120 years. And when he returns, he's going to find me still doing the task that he set before me. And I tell you, that will be challenged. That's been challenged in my life. I've had a year where I just was like, I'm done. It's a difficult road. I'm done. And then what you find is God he graciously calls you back into it and tells you you're not done. And listen to that voice as he's calling you back. Listen to that voice, because he is calling you back. So I just want to encourage you, be doing. When he comes, continue doing that thing that he's called you to do. Continue moving forward. Be ready. Don't let the length of time be the hindrance. Okay? Think about this as we wrap this up. Okay? Moses, if you read the Old Testament, Moses was a man who was given a promise. He was given a promise that he was going to be the leader in Israel. He was given a promise that he was going to be the one to deliver Israel out of the hands of the Egyptians. And so Moses even tried to do it at around, 40 years old. He decided, you know what, I'm going to rise up against the Egyptians and I'm going to deliver my people Israel from their hand. But it wasn't God's timing yet. And so Moses kind of all but gave up. And then God called him. At 80 years old, God called Moses to go and to deliver the people Israel. And here Moses was old and he's like, man, I'm done. Really? At 80, I'm going to go back there? I'm not good at speaking. He had been humbled, massively humbled. And yet God was only just beginning the ministry of Moses. Think of Abraham. Abraham was told he was going to have a son and that his son was going to be the father of a great nation. And as you know, Abraham was the father of Israel. And so, but Abraham didn't have that son until he's 100 years old before he even had that promise. And so here he had to wait his whole life. And many of you might think that your best years are behind you. Maybe you're at an age where you say, you know what, now it's just, I'm just going to grow in the Lord and whatever, the best years are behind me. I tell you what, the calling of God is be doing when he returns. Keep going. I think very possibly for some of us, the best years are still ahead of us. That the promise that he gave us when we were a kid, that thing that he told us when we were younger, that it's not done now. It's still, if he gave you that promise and you haven't seen it, it's still yet to come. And so we don't want to give up. We don't want to say, you know what, this ministry stuff is for the young generation. But truly, we want to be the ones who grab onto it and we say, you know what, I'm going to trust him and I'm going to live for him and I'm going to do what he's called me to do and I'm going to be doing when he comes. And I'm going to be the faithful servant. I'm not going to be the one who gives up on what he's told me to do because, man, he's taken a long time. Okay, we don't want to be that one. There are story after story in the Bible about how God has done work in the latter years of one's life. And even outside of the Bible, there is story after story after story of how God has used people in their latter years to do amazing things. And so look forward because there's still time left, but God's not done with the work that he's begun. So anyways, guys, we got through chapter 24, 633. And we'll get in chapter 25 tomorrow. Hope you'll join with us. We lost some people along the way, so I don't know if people had to cut out early. Got some people late though. Good morning, Shanna. Awesome, guys. See you guys. Have a good Tuesday. I got a busy day. Look into the podcast coming out. Should be around 8 o'clock my time. Awesome. All right, guys. Love you. See you tomorrow.